and welcome back to the Work Well podcast. Today in the show, I'm delighted to welcome Janet Buckley. Janet is Head of Organisational Development with the Competition and Consumer Protection Commission, the CCPC. In her role, she has responsibility for all elements of organisational development, HR, L&D, and well-being. She has over 24 years experience across the civil and public service, with additional experience in the private and charity sectors. She has been in OD roles for the last 16 years, which is where her passion for workplace well-being emerged. And trust me, you will hear her passion. Janet joins me today to debunk the myths that well-being is expensive and time-consuming, and that it's HR's responsibility. Sit back and enjoy our conversation. So Janet, hello and welcome to the Work Well podcast.
Hello, Brian. Good morning. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. And how are you? And how is work and how is life for you at the moment?
I'm good. But there's ups and downs. I think, like everybody, this whole situation has just been so beyond what we could ever imagine. That, there are good days and there are bad days. So and work has been very busy. I'm not one of these people that had the luxury of making sourdough and putting on Instagram for weeks on end. We've been flat out. So other than that, though, good.
Very good. And bring us up to speed a little bit. Tell us a little bit about your background and your role then.
Okay, so I've always had an interest in workplace well-being, and I was thinking about this. I am old enough to remember when there used to be a workplace well-being, a work-life balance week in March every year. So if you Google that goes way, way back. But I've probably been in OG roles for about 16 years, and that was part of my remit. It's stuck with me since then. Now I'm in an OD/HR role, but it's something that I've always valued, and I think it's really, really important. And I think it can be done well, and it doesn't have to be expensive, and it doesn't have to be all bells and whistles, But I've over the years I've managed to bring teams of people with me. I also think it belongs to everybody, that it's not something that HR comes down and does to people. I think that doesn't allow for that collective responsibility. One of my belief systems about well-being is that we all have a personal and collective responsibility to make work life better for each other. So I've been using that principle to kind of promote well-being in both of this organisation and in my last organisation. So everything from fitness to healthy eating to psychological well-being,
Fantastic. And so what you're talking about there, that collective responsibility, that kind of echoes to me of what the World Health Organization, how they kind of define a healthy workplace. It's the collaboration between employers and employees, if you like, so meeting halfway. So yes, you can have a fantastic work environment, but if you as the individual are kind of not taking a little bit of responsibility for your own well-being, it's not going to count for a whole lot. So it's that collaboration between the two. So you're definitely echoing that. Where does your own kind of knowledge of this come from? Because you've sent me on some documentation and the well-being strategy, which we'll touch on in a little while. Where does your own kind of knowledge of this area come from?
I think I'm trained as a yoga teacher, so I'm very interested in that whole holistic space, and the real principles of yoga are all that inclusive, like that, the whole of person and the whole of, your collective impact on people as well. Like when you look at the principles of karma yoga and stuff like that. But I suppose one of the things that struck me was we spend so much of our time in work, and I've been a commuter for over 18 years. And I think, to try and make work better for people. So just through research, through reaching out, talking to people, I've come across it in various, kind of inclusive initiatives, and it just literally ignited something in me. And then I started to read up on it more. I started to learn about it. I started to reach out to people, a bit like reaching out to yourself, to see what others were doing. I started to hear about what the Googles were doing. I started to think about, well, how can that translate into the public sector? Why should we be any different? I mean, there's a fantastic lot of stuff that was happening in the public sector long before Google ever showed up. Like they had fantastic family-friendly initiatives, really good, kind of like the shorter working year, the job sharing, and all that stuff was all there, and it was there for years, but nobody ever called it out as a well-being thing. So yeah, so it was kind of self-educated, and then just ignited a real passion. And I could talk and listen to this stuff forever, you know.
That's great, yeah, and great that it came from that passion and that self-learning. But you've actually, you're following a really, I don't know, a kind of well-defined path or a research-based path, because a lot of what I've seen from your strategy document is actually kind of how the principles we teach on the postgrad in Trinity. So you're actually it's almost as if you've gone through the program already, to be honest, looking at some of your documentation. So really well done on that. It's quite impressive. Tell us about the
I kind of took the same.
I was going to say you're in Competition and Consumer Protection Commission, and so public sector body, limited budget, as you've said. I think it's not a huge team, if I'm not mistaken. Is it around the 120 mark?
Yeah, it's a small enough organisation, but we are growing quite rapidly. Actually, we're going through a lot of change, a lot of big growth spurt at the moment.
Sure.
So when I started years ago, we were 89, and we're going to continue to grow in that way for the next 2 years. So there's a lot to do and a lot of goodwill to harness. But no, you're right. And I suppose with strategy, what I would say about that is I take well-being as serious as I would take the HR strategy or the L&D strategy, and I think it does need that framework in order for it to be successful. So that's probably where I got the principles of how to do that from. If you wanted to have real sustained impact, if you want anything to have sustained impact, and that's what I want it to become part of our DNA. And definitely in the last organisation, and to do that you do need a strategy. So it just seemed logical to me to do that. So sorry for stealing the postgrad idea. I was really looking forward to doing that, but now you're going to tell me that I might not need it.
Oh, there's an awful lot more. We dive a lot deeper there. but looking at, I've got your document in front of me here. So the employee wellbeing strategy, it's 2018 to 2020. You've called out, the wellbeing vision, which is almost the first principle we kind of talk about, is can you align your well-being vision to the organizational vision? So that's something you've done right from the off in that document, which is fantastic. And I can also see here, so you kind of linked it to looks like it's the 2016 to 2019, the organizational development strategy. So again, you're getting well-being on the agenda there for the overall kind of organizational strategy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We did that. And one of the things I'll say about both this organisation and the last one is that the senior leadership buy-in is massive. You can't do this stuff without it. Like you really can't. And it has to be authentic. And I'm very glad to say, as I sit here, and I was mentioning before we formally start, I've just had a very good conversation with our leadership team just last week, and they're very keen to ensure that well-being stays valued and authentic, and that it's seen that it's not just seen as this fluffy social thing over there, and they'd be very kind of, I think, disappointed if it was to turn out that way. So we're going to have another conversation next week to see, basically, from a leadership perspective, how can they help, sustain the impact of what we've done to date. But you do need an ambassador, you need a champion, you need someone who's going to drive it, and you need the leaders to talk about it, because that conversation can be so powerful and so impactful. In my last organisation, when we had we did a big burst program there, we did a month long of intense stuff, and then we, as a launch platform for culture change, and people were saying to the leaders, what do you want us to do? And I was like, just talk about it, just say to people, have you done anything, have you participated, this is great, I was thinking of doing that, and that was one of the most powerful tools we had. So definitely the leadership and the communication was key.
Very good, yeah. And leadership is probably step one on our framework that we use. So it is so important, as you mentioned. And it's not that some people think it might be just kind of writing the check every now and then, or this kind of idea. But as you've touched on there, it's communication, it's participation, it's maybe, yes, it's allocation of some kind of resources, not always necessarily financial, but kind of that kind of buy-in and support for time, for effort, and commitment on the program is essential. So, and I see, so the current wellbeing strategy is 2018 to 2020. So I'm guessing in the background now, you're looking at the 2021 to 2023 strategy, wellbeing strategy. Could you maybe talk us through, and the listeners, what's involved in that, in preparing like a three-year plan for wellbeing?
Well, we are also moving into our new people strategy. So we've broadened the umbrella of our HR strategy, the OD strategy, and we're going to do an all-encompassing people strategy. And then well-being will be one of the pillars under that, along with leadership and learning and development, and then best practice in HR. So there'll be a lot of staff consultation. It'll be important for us to measure the current strategy. So we'll do some measurement, and we've already done a staff survey on our wellbeing response to COVID, which we connect very well in that. We were very proud of that. But I think measurement is important, and then that consultation. So it'll form part of a broader consultation, but we will have very specifically designed and engineered pieces around wellbeing, both at leadership level and both across the organisation. To look at basically how we can map well-being moving forward and how we can potentially improve what we do, and to make it sustainable. And then that will transfer into documents. And as part of that whole people piece, we will be looking at our values again and making sure that the pillars underneath do align to the values. So yeah, good body of work, but it's usually fun work. It's good. It gets good energy going in the organisation. People are very bought, people get very bought into it, and they really want to contribute to make the organisation good. And that's probably something that I would say about both this one and my last organisation, because they're both public sector. The drive and commitment is phenomenal. Like, people usually choose to work for the CCPC because they have an interest in consumer law and protecting consumers. And in my last organisation, justice sector as well. And that commitment was massive, and it was one of the reasons I wanted to ensure that we valued our people and that we made them feel that they were, valued and recognised for that huge commitment, because they really do go above and beyond.
Fantastic. And yeah, so we've mentioned the leadership piece, but now you're into the employee involvement as well, getting the input, the feedback, the commitment of your people as well, and they can really feel then that they have a purpose, or they have a role in developing and defining the strategy. So that's crucial as well. So I mean, you're really on top of that. So that sounds like you're really motoring in that area too.
Can I retrospectively get the diploma or the postgrad certificate?
We'll get you involved in the next run. Absolutely. We might get you in for a case study, actually, for a chat, because you've done one thing.
Yeah, we'd love that, actually.
Yeah, one thing you do speak quite kind of passionately about as well, like you've mentioned a couple of times. So public sector, not a huge team, limited budget. Budget is something you're kind of keen to promote, the idea that you can do an awful lot on a limited budget. And it's probably the most frequent question I get is, sure, I've no budget. I can't compete with X, Y, and Z. What do I do? Where do I start? What advice would you have?
First of all, to look at what you do, and I mentioned about what the public sector had already done, but it's also about branding and promoting things collectively. So we all do a lot of things, like we do tax saver, we do bike to work, bring it under an umbrella. And both this organisation and the last one, I got a logo. We used that logo. We literally put it on everything that was connected to wellbeing. But more importantly than that, then, is to look at what you have. So we had a limited budget. So, for instance, we wanted to promote safe cycling during the Bike to Work Week, the National Bike Week. So we went to the local bike store. We said to them, "Do you want to bring in a couple of demo bikes and then talk to people about safe city cycling?" That was free. We wrote to the RSA. We got free high-vis gear, which we get out of National Bike Week, also free. Something else that we did on a budget. And these are like what I'm talking about now is those kind of fun things. So we're not talking about the kind of more more serious things, but I will talk about them. But the ice cream van, I said, this is one of my favorite stories. I wanted to hire an ice cream van. It's like astronomical. I was like horrified to think of how much an ice cream van wanted. So what did we do? We worked beside Iceland. We got 2 buckets of ice. We went round. We spent about €25. We sent a summer invitation. We always do personalised invitations. Sent a summer invitation and said, by the way, come to the canteen at lunchtime. You'll get a free ice cream. And like 100 people got an ice cream for €25. And people were just walking around. I mean, adults love ice cream like children do. People were walking around the office delighted with themselves for the day. I was delighted. We're all happy out having had the ice cream. And then what we did then was we used our money very wisely and strategically. So we got a wear-in. That was a cost, okay? But under health and safety legislation, you have an obligation to look after the well-being of people. So we were able to use a bit of L&D budget for that. And that was really, really good. And we put it on during the day because we said to people, look, mental health is really important. I'm not going to invite you to a lunch and learn to talk about your mental health. I'm going to give it to you during the day. And that was really well valued. So that's the other thing as well. I think some of the mistakes are that people try to push things into lunch and learns all the time, but sometimes it's nice to give something to people during the day. So it's that time piece that you talked about. Other things then, like we, for the bike thing as well, we had one of our people come up and he was like, actually, do you know what, I could give a better bike demo than him. So next year I'll do 3 bike maintenance sessions for free at lunchtime. And he taught people how to change a tire, how to fix a chain, how to check their brakes. That was free. We had a former scout leader. He brought a gang of us out hill walking for 6 weeks during the summer, every Wednesday. And we let people like leave a half an hour early, the hill walkers. And our director went out on that, and that was fantastic. And it really got a real buzz and a real energy. Another good cheap one is mindfulness. So I mentioned to you before about Beaumont and the Mark Centre. Huge free resources on mindfulness. We had someone who was really passionate about it. They facilitated a space at lunchtime for 10 minutes of mindfulness every Monday. They picked really good audios each week and just changed it up and put these audios on and just created a comfortable space, and people went down and practiced mindfulness. It costs nothing, just other than the staff time. So there are so many free resources that you can tap into. And as you know, they're just like 5 examples, but I could talk about this stuff for probably a good hour and a half. So I'll probably stop now so you can ask me the next question.
So many great examples there already, and some great points. And I've noticed that as well. The lunchtime piece, people value their lunchtime. If you are going to run a session, 11 a.m. seems to be kind of the sweet spot before people's lunch. Yeah, and during their working day, it's actually, you're kind of valuing their time. You're giving them something during the working day. People do really appreciate that, I have noticed. And another lesson learned there is you may not win friends with salad, but you can win friends with ice cream. So maybe not all day, every day, but it's nice to bring out the ice cream. So great work there as well. So, and you've touched on kind of the survey and measurements, and I saw from the wellbeing strategy document as well, you have a detailed section on measurement and evaluation. Could you tell us a little bit about that? Because that's a key part as well. What gets measured can be improved upon, as we all know. So that's something you have kind of set out from day one. You've got your measurement targets in there.
Absolutely, and we do measure participation rates. We keep records on those just to see trends and what works well and what doesn't, and also around timing what works well. But I'm very fortunate that the organisation places such value on it that they've actually allowed a resource from each division to participate in what we call the Wellbeing Committee. And that Wellbeing Committee is the informal feedback mechanism for a lot of stuff. So we're constantly getting just-in-time feedback live on our events. We have the participation rates. We've done the midpoint survey, as I mentioned. We did it in response to COVID. We look at the money of what we spend. We look at the amount of hours that we're spending in terms of the participation rate by the time of the event, and to see how much of our time was spent on it. And we use that just to kind of analyze, well, where was the best effort and where wasn't it? And one of the things that we'll do now coming out of the strategy is to do that formal measurement again. So we were very fortunate. Another free resource, the Heart Foundation, has a wealth of resources on it, and they shared a fantastic survey with us that we tweaked just a little bit before we went into our strategy, and that was the strategy that we used as that was the survey we used as the baseline for the strategy. So we're going to do that again, and we're going to look at, and hopefully we'll see a positive trend in improvements. So one of the things was around hydration. We ran a hydration awareness campaign. Another one was about screen time. So we ran a digital detox. Both of those free events cost very little. I think we got out of them for like 20, 30 euros, and we ran week-long campaigns raising awareness about 2 very important areas of health. So we'll measure that, and we'll see, are people eating more fruit? Are they having more physical exercise? Are our screen time habits better? Are we hydrating better, and stuff like that? And that'll give us that baseline to measure back and forward. So yeah, that's a little bit on measurements. That's where we're going with that one.
That's a really kind of refreshing to hear you say. When I'm asking about measurements, almost the first thing you're telling me about is you're measuring the health behaviors, the health outcomes of your people. For some organizations might jump straight into the financial side of things. How much is this saving us? How much money are we getting? How much bang are we getting for our buck? So really refreshing to hear you looking at the health behaviors, the health outcomes.
Absolutely. I mean, it's one of the key pillars of the strategy. And like, you know, I'm not going to sit here and pretend as a HR practitioner that, you know, it'd be great to see that, you know, trends in sick leave and things like that. Absolutely. But first and foremost, we want our people to be well. Because, you know, that is in, you know, that's really the heart of the well-being, you know, of the well-being strategy. We want to help them create better habits. And we talked about work-life balance previously, but I don't feel that that's achievable anymore. Life blends, work, life, it just all mixes. And I think, you know, we need to create healthy habits throughout our day, and that includes at work, you know. So
yeah, great point. And you've already mentioned kind of the positive commitment of the leadership team. What are your conversations or around well-being like? Are you when you get these kind of results back, these trends as you mentioned, are you kind of going back to them and presenting to them and saying, look, here's the positive improvements, or here's an area we could improve upon? Is that how it works?
yeah, so I generally speaking, we're up with the all staff as well. So we've got an all staff and we've got like a leadership, we've got our senior leadership team, but absolutely, you know, I'd be talking to them about that as well. And one of the things that struck me, particularly in this organisation, is when I pitched the wellbeing strategy to the leadership team, one of them really spoke out about something, and he was very passionate about it. And he was like, well, can we ensure that if we're going to do well-being, that we be authentic and we encourage people to take their proper leave, and we make sure that people take a good break from work? He said, because if we're going to buy fruit and facilitate yoga in the, you know, put on yoga in the evening, like all be, you know, paid by the person, you know, if we're not telling people to take a break and if we're not teaching people to turn off, it doesn't really mean anything. And it was so true. And, you know, people may not connect it in the organisation from us in HR twice a year, at least saying to them, and also messages from the leadership team saying, taking holidays, you need to take a break, you need to turn off, it's important, you know, this is very important for your well-being. So yeah, no, they're very interested and keen to see how it works out. So very much feeding it back. At the moment, just based on the COVID response that we did, and the measure of the well-being based on the extra things that we put in place for people. You know, I was up in front of the commission and the senior team, and I was, you know, give them an absolute overview of it, and the staff spoke for themselves, you know. So it's a no-brainer, really. I don't have to sell it anymore. It actually sells itself, you know, which is a fantastic result. And I have to say, it's been really driven by the committees. So, you know, me on my own, I haven't achieved this. We literally have achieved it together, and I'm so proud of all the work that we've done, you know, in the committee.
Very good. Yeah, it really does sound like you've got that a great momentum behind you now. So as you said, it's kind of selling itself. It's that momentum, and so the leadership.
I'm sure we can improve,
Brian. and the leadership clearly involved the committee, as you mentioned. So I mean, some people might call them, you know, wellbeing champions or wellbeing advocates. So for in the CCPC, they're the Wellbeing Committee. Tell us a little bit about how did that come together? You mentioned there's someone from each division, is it? And they're kind of volunteering for this, is it?
Yeah. So initially, obviously, I was new to the organisation, so I didn't really know who was who. But I always believed that you should look outside your own circle. So I did in the last organisation as well. Don't pick your friends with this stuff, because your friends will just influence your friends. You'll be sitting in a bubble with just you and your friends, your key circle. And what you want is to look outside of that and try and identify, well, you know, who's well respected, who's well regarded, who can promote and sell this stuff well. So I had a conversation with a couple of people that I barely knew at the time, and said to them, okay, I have this great idea and I've got this great vision, and will you come on board? And I said, look, if you don't think it's authentic, you can step away. But they've come on board, and it's absolutely brilliant. One of them leads the induction for new Wellbeing Committee members, so they actually have a little induction coffee with that particular member of the committee. Initially, we didn't take, like, we're not meeting weekly, we're not meeting monthly. It doesn't work like that. We do bursts of programs. So we'll plan an autumn program, and that'll cover autumn winter, and then we'll start late in the winter, we'll start planning the summer program, and that starts usually with National Workplace Wellbeing Day and spans into the autumn. So like when people talk about like collective effort, it doesn't, you're not sitting around for an hour a week talking about this stuff, or at least we weren't before COVID. We are putting a lot more effort into it, and we are meeting more regularly because it's needed at the moment. But no, it's been brilliant. And we always look for people who have a passion for it, who believe in it. We have conversations with the skeptics too, but I think from a committee perspective, to keep the energy, the momentum, you need people that have that passion in them, you know. And I think I was telling you as well, we give them, like, they get feedback. So informally, they've got a goal, it's in their goals, they get feedback from me. I write to the manager and tell them, like, whether they were involved in this and they were involved in that, and they led on this particular campaign and it was really effective. So that, you know, we have that formal structure as well, whereby they get recognition within their performance review for the work that they do, which I think is hugely important.
That is hugely important, yeah, and that, again, that's quite innovative. I mean, I've seen a couple of companies in the US do that, include well-being goals, if you like, in the performance review, but it's very new in Ireland. There's only one or two organizations doing it, so we can add the CCPC to the list now. So that you're right, though, it's so important that reward, that recognition for that effort that they're putting in. That's a huge driver.
Yeah, no, definitely, yeah. It's, you know, and it's just so important. And as I said, well-being isn't about expense. It's not about, you know, the bells and whistles. It's about valuing people, and that includes the committee, and it includes, you know, the people who get involved. So we also have this kind of partnering arrangement as well. So there are some people who are involved in particular elements of well-being. So we've got a lot of different nationalities in the organisation. So someone approached the Wellbeing Committee and asked us, could we do a celebration for Chinese New Year? We've got a number of Chinese nationals that work with us. And they came in and they helped, and they did that. And we kind of steered them, and we ran this beautiful event for 2 years where we did this celebratory lunchtime event. And that person isn't involved in wellbeing, but it creates that approachability. So then that creates that collective kind of responsibility again. So if somebody's very interested, the wellbeing, they know who to go to and they know who to talk to about it. Can we do this? Can we think about doing this? So we now have a new book club that's launched, and that came about from feedback from people, that just in time feedback. So I think they've just finished their first book, our remote book club. So it's that constant, it's very organic, it's very live, you know, as well as the formal stuff.
Very good, yeah. So lots of cool, innovative stuff going on there. But and as you mentioned, the role of the Wellbeing Committee there, I always say as well, it's, as you mentioned, so difficult for an individual or even a group of individuals in a team, in a silo, if HR, for example, to try and run and own the well-being strategy. It's almost impossible. You really need, though, that committee, those people on the ground in different departments, different locations, if that's the case, different voices representing different elements of the organization. So it sounds like you really have that. And you touched on if I can just say, so I know where there's a bit of a time delay there, but you touched on the remote book club. Is there anything else you've been doing or you've kind of adapted in the last couple of months for our new remote working environment? Remote book club sounds cool.
Yeah, no, we've done loads. So the first thing we did when we went out was, because we went 0 to 90, we weren't remote workers. We literally were like not remote working on Monday. By Friday, we were remote working. So it was a huge, massive change for us. So the first thing I did was I spoke to a couple of people that had experience of remote working. I said, look, what are your challenges? What supports did you need? You know, what helped you work from home better? And he gave me a whole list of stuff. And then I said to the leaders, I need the Wellbeing Committee support here. And I brought those ideas to the Wellbeing Committee and within my own team, because some of them were HR related. And we basically set about a schedule of events. So we did a resource on wellbeing working from home. We used the MARC stuff. We used some of the HSE stuff. Fabulous free resources, cost me absolutely nothing. We did one for managing your new work environment, what that meant. We did ergonomics. We actually did put on yoga for the price yoga. It doesn't have to cost the earth. We did that online. We then were very concerned about team collegiality. With our all staff, was we had an award ceremony. We sent out plastic medals and certificates of commendation to the people who won. We've done a steps challenge for cross-team collaboration. So people signed up, but we put them on different teams. We did we walked Route 66 and back. There was photograph competitions. We did a colouring competition for the kids for Easter. We've done awards for best. We've done a Thursday trek, so people went out on a Thursday walking, and we did a photo competition. God, I'm trying to think. We did manager resources as well, because people were saying, look, I want to be managed. For me, managing people well is part of well-being as well. It does have an impact. We've the book club. I'm trying to think what else we've done. We've done a huge amount. We did Gold Jersey Day recently, so we have an annual Gold Cup. We've got a gorgeous silver cup with our corporate ribbon on it. So this Lucky Dip challenge, it takes like 20 minutes on Friday. There's like emojis. There's been scavenger hunt pieces in it. We've done virtual Guess Who. And it's all been done very much kind of Wellbeing Committee dressed up in a dicky bow and did like a formal award ceremony where people had to kind of show up with their medals. So that created great collegiality. And it's basically, look, we'll try anything once and we'll see how it goes. We also promoted our employee assistance service as well, and we did a huge thing on mental health. We always do green ribbon. We're very passionate about that. So we've done that, and as I said, the leaders are now going to step in. We did a lot of supports around people with families, so and caring responsibilities, very much when the schools were out. Very positive messages about that when that went out first. I think the survey showed that people felt very supported at that time. So I hope that we're continuing in a positive way. It'll be interesting to measure again to see how we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think there's a lesson for anyone listening in that kind of uses or says they've no budget or, for well-being activities. Because all the really innovative and broad spectrum of initiatives you mentioned there, I wouldn't say they cost a whole lot, if anything at all. So there's not a whole lot of excuses. I guess it's time. You certainly need the time, you need the effort to put into that commitment. That's what you need, first and foremost. And if you have a little bit of budget to put on top of that, fantastic. But it's the time and the effort that is key. So listen, we've spoken a lot about all the wonderful initiatives that you're running internally there from a work perspective. How are you managing your own well-being from a personal perspective? How's that going?
I've been good and bad. At the start of lockdown, I just literally was running myself into the ground, but I kind of had to take a good long kind of check, kind of a couple of months into it, and take responsibility. So I live in the grounds of Castletown House. It's a stunning piece of woodlands that I wasn't using. So now every day I get out and I walk every morning. It's just literally, it's like my meditation, and it's so important for me. I was quite lucky. I do have so ensure that I maintain it, particularly when you're so close to the fridge. Being at home, the snacks are there. But also reaching out to people. I live alone. I feel very isolated. I miss hugs. I miss my nieces. I've got a great circle of friends around me, but nothing compensates for the love and joy that you spend with your family and your nieces. So just trying to stay connected with people like that and being very mindful of and being kind to myself, I think is really important. I'm realizing how tough this is. So for the first couple of months, I was kind of almost in denial. I was like, oh, sure, I'm fine in this situation. It doesn't mean anything. But then I had to sit back and go, no, actually, Janet, you're not fine. And that's okay. And talk to people about it and just, ensure that I had positive habits in my day. And that's something we're looking at on the Wellbeing. The habits we have from summer are not going to work. We're going to have to change or modify them. So, if you go for a walk after work every day, are you going to want to do it in the dark? Is it going to have the same impact on you? Probably not. So maybe you're better off going out at lunchtime and trying to kind of promote those kind of things so people become very conscious of, just slight tweaks to what they do in order to maintain that healthy habits that they bring into the winter. So that's something that we're looking at the moment. But you have to keep a check of yourself as well. That's the other thing,
Yeah, you absolutely do. Yeah. And positive habits, positive behaviors, as you mentioned, so important. And a really nice line, I think you mentioned there to finish up with, be kind to yourself. Don't beat yourself up. So don't compare yourself to others on Instagram. It's okay not to be okay. Absolutely. As we face into the winter. Yeah, be kind to yourself. Janet, thanks so much for your time. Where can people go to find out more about you and the work that you're doing?
So Brian, I'm on LinkedIn, and I'm very happy to connect with anybody and talk about this and talk about my experience, and particularly the free stuff if that's of interest. But also likewise, if they're not on LinkedIn, I'm quite happy for them to reach out to me through you if that's okay. You know, and you can potentially put people in touch with me. So either of those, and I quite gladly would share anything that I've done with anybody that's interested.
That is absolutely okay. And I know you actually reached out to Sheila Greeny, a previous podcast guest, and did something similar. So fantastic to be able to offer something back like that, real kind of community effort. So Janet, listen, thanks again, and I'll talk with you soon.
No problem. Listen, thank you, Brian. Thanks for having me on. It was a pleasure. Cheers.